Good morning. I will call the April 26, 2016 Wright County Board meeting to order, and we always begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, so please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That lady that just walked in late, we should have made her lead the Pledge of Allegiance.
The minutes of April 19, 2016. Anybody have any corrections for the minutes?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second that.
Motion by Commissioner Potter, second by Commissioner Houston. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Motion carries unanimous. And today's agenda, does anybody have any additions or amendments to the agenda?
Mr. Chair, we did receive a correspondence from Woodland Township, and I would like to maybe just briefly talk about that and where you want to put it in.
We'll put that items for consideration D. Woodland Township. Letter. Anybody else have anything?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the agenda with the one addition.
I'll second it.
Motion by Commissioner Potter, second by Commissioner Delight. And any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Motion carries unanimous. And the consent agenda. Any items to be removed from the consent agenda for further discussion?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Delight and second by Commissioner Burrell. For those in the audience, the consent agenda are generally non-controversial items, and we pass, as you can see, a number of them, about a dozen items or so today in one motion. So if somebody wants to remove something, they're more than welcome to do that, but often they don't. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair, just a note, on page 28 of the bills, with court debt service, Springstead Inc., there's a miscoding on there, but that's been brought to the attention of Mr. Hevla with the Auditor Treasurer's Office, and that will be corrected.
Okay.
Just as a note.
Hi, Mr. Chair. I was told that this claim is going to be changed to bond issuing expenses.
Correct.
Right.
Should be under prefix 34, not 36. I just want to make everybody aware of that.
Thank
That
you.
needs to be taken care of.
Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Motion carries unanimous. That brings us down to our 9:05 item on the agenda. Wright County Boy-Girl Day. Introductions and board proceedings, questions, answer period, among other things. We've kind of got a special treat for you today. I see you folks are going to be here till 9:30. And at 9:10, we have Dr. Quinn Strobel, who's going to approach the podium. She just walked in. She's the Wright County Medical Examiner. So we used to call him the coroner years ago. It's kind of the forensic science individual for the county. And she's going to give her annual report for last year, and you'll have a chance to be here during much of that discussion. But at this time, if we could introduce ourselves. First, I want to thank you all for coming this morning. Welcome to the Wright County Government Center, and welcome to the Wright County Board meeting this morning. We meet here every Tuesday morning at 9 a.m., or nearly every Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. Once in a while, we take a Tuesday off about 4 times a year, but generally we're here Tuesdays at 9 a.m. going about doing county business. My name is Pat Swatsky. I'm from Monticello, and I represent the areas of Monticello Township, Silver Creek, Maple Lake Township, Clearwater, and Clearwater Township. And if others could introduce themselves as well, we each serve 4-year terms on the county board.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Michael Potter. I represent District 4, which includes Albertville, the west half of St. Michael, west of County Road 19, Hanover, Rockford, and Rockford Township.
I'm Christine Hewsome. I'm from Buffalo, and I am a District 1 Commissioner. And I have the cities of Annandale, Buffalo, and South Haven, and the townships of Buffalo, Chatham, Corinna, Albion, Southside. Did I miss one? 5? 5 townships. So. welcome.
Mark?
I'm Mark Delight, and I represent District Number 3, which is eastern St. Michael, east of County Road 19, and all of Otsego.
And I'm Charlie Burrell from Waverly, actually Woodland Township, and I represent the rest of the county. No. Actually, I do have a very large part. It's from Delano, Montrose, Waverly, Howard Lake, and Cokato, and then all the way up to French Lake Township. So the townships associated to it would be Franklin, Marysville, Woodland, Middleville, Victor, Cokato, Stockholm, French Lake. I think I got
Yeah,
them
you
all
got 8.
7. Yeah, so it's a whole kind of southern third of the county. So
He has the largest area, I have the smallest area.
yeah,
We each
we still get
represent,
along.
we each represent approximately 25,000 in people, so there's about 125,000, at least in the last census, more than that, I suppose now, but each of us represents approximately 25,000 residents in our district, and some districts like Mr. Deleiden's are quite small because there's a lot of people living in a close proximity to each other, and in Charlie's areas where there's many farms, his district is spatially quite large. Lee, could you and Susan introduce yourselves, please?
Sure. Lee Kelly, I'm the county coordinator. I have a South Haven address, but I am on the Stern side where I live. So I apologize for that. Kind of my role is the liaison from the board to the department heads and a lot of facilitation of kind of the day-to-day activities of what goes on at the county and coordinating those activities. So.
And I'm Susan Dacus. I'm the clerk to the county board.
Could our individuals from the press identify themselves so the students know who you are and why you're here?
Under Witness Protection Program.
And Mr. Chair, we also have another.
And could you introduce yourself, Will? Okay, thank you. And my understanding is we have students here from Monticello, Howard Lake, and
No, Cokato.
Monticello, Cokato, and
Maple Lake.
Maple Lake. Okay. You sure there's not more than that?
Oh, there's 10 in the back row.
Oh, there's only 2 from DC in that, okay, okay. Well, okay. Well, again, thank you for your attendance today. Did anybody have any, in our board meetings here at Wright County, we run what I guess I would call pretty open meetings, and we always allow for public input, and with that being said, does anybody have any comments or questions they'd like to provide to the board at this time? If not, we'll hopefully give you a chance a little bit later as well, but did anybody wish to make any comments or questions at this point?
Well, I was kind of hoping maybe some of these guys would have some answers on how we can do things better.
Well, that's the comment portion. I said it could be comments or questions.
Well, I wouldn't say question, I was saying answers.
Okay. Answers?
Obviously not.
Not yet.
No? Okay. I think what we'll do at this time then, if it's okay with the board, maybe we'll have Dr. Strobel kind of do her report, and at some point, Dr. Strobel, how long is your report today? 10 minutes or so? Well, we don't want you to go too brief because you have an interesting discussion.
They might have questions for you.
Dr. Strobel, as I mentioned, is our Wright County medical examiner, and annually she comes and gives us a report on her work. Interestingly enough, I understand your office is in charge of the prints examination and that sort of thing, so and is going to determine the cause of death in that particular case. So.
Yes, that's assigned to us, yes.
Are you on any episodes of Forensic Files yet? Hopefully you don't.
We know her predecessor was on one of the TV
Yeah,
shows.
I know there was one.
I prefer obscurity.
So, Dr. Strobel, you have a room full of high school juniors today as well, so.
This happened in Pine County as well. Is this intentional?
Oh.
That I'm on student day?
Was that the Legion Boy Girl Day there as well?
I don't know, but there were, actually every chair was taken up by students when I was at Pine County. So I saw the agenda and I said, is this a coincidence?
We're coordinating it for you.
Thanks, thank you.
But anyhow, so
very much.
Dr. Strobel is going to give us her annual report today that we give, obviously, once a year from the coroner's office. So go ahead, Dr.
Yeah,
Strobel.
thank you. Good morning. As mentioned, I'm Dr. Strobel, the Chief Medical Examiner for Wright County with the Midwest Medical Examiner's Office. Our office investigates deaths that fall under the medical examiner's jurisdiction or have to be reported to the medical examiner. And in last year, 2015, 481 deaths were reported to our office. Of those 481, we did 49 autopsies. 406 deaths, we declined jurisdiction. That means that the decedent's primary physician could sign their death certificate. And of those 406, there were 181 registered hospice patients. Of the natural deaths, we assumed jurisdiction in 26, and of those, we performed 15 autopsies. The death classifications for those natural deaths, majority were cardiovascular, as is consistent with every year, infectious, drugs, alcohol, or substance abuse, and then other varied causes. There were 6 motor vehicle incidents last year. The average age of those who died was 54, and they ranged from 27 to 87 years. The death of a 27-year-old driver was associated with alcohol and amphetamine use. There were 8 non-motor vehicle accidents that required an autopsy. The average age of those decedents was 49. Methamphetamine was present in 3 cases. Alcohol was present in 2. Fentanyl, a very potent narcotic, was present in 1. And amphetamine was present in 1 case. Of those, no decedents were younger than 21. There were 11 incidents where deaths were classified as accident, but an autopsy was not required, and that was of 11 people, average age 88, who died of complications due to falls from standing or sitting or bed height. Many times the very elderly and frail will have a very minor fall and fracture their hip or get some head injury, and they die from that. There were 2 homicides last year, and it was 1 incident. 1 person killed 2 people. There were 17 deaths attributed to suicide. The average age was 42 years. The age range was 14 to 65 years. There were 12 males and 5 females. Alcohol was present in 7 of those deaths, and methamphetamine was present in 1. 2 of those, including obviously the 14-year-old and a 17-year-old, were less than 21. There were no deaths classified as undetermined. We had 5 incidents of found bones, and which is very rare, 1 of them was actually human, and that's pending investigation. It's not necessarily forensically significant. It could be an old remains, but it's still active investigation. We're working with our forensic anthropologist on that.
Where was that at?
I don't recall where that was.
I know about 5 years ago, south of Waverly, they were putting an addition onto a house and ran into a grave that was, one of the children had died back in the 1800s or something, so.
Oh, yeah, this was just last year, so
Oh, okay.
2015.
No, well, I mean, they found it
They
recently,
found it this
but
year.
it was a real old grave
Oh.
from a,
Well, it's an honor to serve as your medical examiner. Does anybody have any questions for me?
okay. How does this, I mean, it's always bothers me when you see suicides, but what is do we have a trend, or is it staying steady?
If you
over the
look,
years?
if you have we have a 5-year, the statistics
Oh, I
sheet,
didn't get
you can see that there's, as just kind of what you did with your hand, there's a little bit of highs and a little bit lows, but the percentage is usually about the same. It doesn't vary so much, but you can see the peak was 18 in 2011, and then there were 12, 12, and 13, and then last year there was a little bit of a bump, 17, but again, the percentages kind of stay the same through all of our counties.
Okay. It's just always sad to see that, so it's unnecessary, kind of.
Can you give us a typical case of, of how, perhaps one that results in an autopsy, and of course, nothing that would indicate an individual, but just generally, who goes out there first, and kind of the network that you have in the county with the deputy folks, and how the procedure goes about if your office gets a call about a death that is kind of suspicious or unknown circumstances.
Certainly. So usually when a death occurs outside of an institution, if it's a death at home or in a field or on a roadway, obviously the first one is called 911, right? Everybody calls 911, and law enforcement goes first. Depending on if the person has signs of life or not, it's obviously an ambulance or paramedics may be summoned. Once the person is pronounced dead, Okay, so in some states like Wisconsin, they actually have the coroner or medical examiner pronounce death. That's not so in Minnesota. We don't get called until the person is declared dead. And so if it's just a general case, we have a local representative from our office who's trained in death investigation, and they show up to the scene. If, as you referenced, if it is suspicious or concerning for foul play, then the pathologist is called out, and then we also attend. And we work closely with law enforcement because law enforcement has their job. They have the scene and all of that going on, and we're in charge of the body. But we have to work together to do the investigation. And so in those cases, the pathologist will go, depending, look for injuries, maybe look for anything at the scene that would contribute to death. And then the body, of course, is eventually transported to our office where we do an autopsy.
I thought maybe, Tom Kelly, county attorney, but we're gonna do a little spiel, but as long as the doctor was up here, you know I'm a prosecutor, I hold people accountable, but when I have a murder case, and let's say it's gonna be a first degree homicide case, I can't charge that. The grand jury has to do that. So with Dr. Amatuzio and now Dr. Strobel, many times I will call them to come out to explain to the grand jury, like the manner of death and the cause of death. I mean, the cause can be a gunshot wound, a knifing, what have you, but the manner can be an accident, suicide, or murder, homicide. And we need the medical examiner to explain what that might be. And years ago, her predecessor, Dr. Amatuzio, I had an elderly lady that was brutally murdered in her basement. And we were trying to figure out the cause of death, and it turned out to be a claw hammer. But these medical examiners are able to kind of match up what those wounds might be. And then when we find something that might match that, it just helps us with regard to proving our case. So we have to have a very close relationship with our medical examiner and law enforcement in order for us to charge the most serious charges that we have in the county. So she does an awesome job.
Mr. Chair, Dr. Strobel, about how long does it normally take? I mean, when we're watching these shows, and of course they have everything summed up in an hour. And when you're doing your exam, I suppose depending on the toxicology tests and all that kind of thing, that can take some time.
Right.
What's an average, if there is such a thing, time that, from the time that you've performed the autopsy till you've gotten the report finished?
Yeah, if there is, toxicologic studies that are being done, it's about an average is a month.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
30 days.
Do any of our guests have any questions for Dr. Strobel today? Yes? Ma'am, you maybe don't want to do this, but we have a procedure where you'll need to come to the podium and, no?
Come on.
The only reason we ask is that way because these meetings are tape recorded and whatnot, and other, if somebody's and they're also live on the internet, they're live streamed, so people that are watching from some other venue not here actually hear what your question is.
Right.
And, okay?
I was just wondering how many cases you can take on at one time. Like, how many, like, is there a certain number of people you can take in and work on?
Well, we can't really plan our day. The average, we get 1 or 2 every day. Some days we have 7. There's 3 pathologists in our office, and so, we can do 3 exams at any one time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You do more for than just Wright County,
Correct.
correct? What, you want to?
Yeah, what counties do you, each county is responsible for having a medical examiner, and we've chosen Dr. Strobel's group to do that. And what other counties do you provide this service for?
Well, we're the contracted medical examiner, the named medical examiner for 19
Okay.
counties.
So it's obviously, you can see it's a very specialized field, and how many folks actually do this in the state? How many various offices are there similar to yours?
There are, I think there's ours, there's Hennepin, there's the Mayo Clinic, and then Ramsey County, I believe. Some of our most northern states, actually, they go to Marianne Sens in North Dakota because it's closer
Okay.
than us. So. But there aren't a lot.
Okay, so there's
How many counties do you have?
19 out of 87 counties in the state of Minnesota.
And Mr. Chair,
Charlie.
do you represent Carver?
Yes.
So you can't comment on them? the Prince thing.
Correct.
But your office will be the one that will be providing that report to law enforcement then?
Yes.
Yeah, she's been in the,
Yep.
you've been on the print already.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Dr. Strobel?
Unrelated to Carver County.
Unrelated to, unrelated to this Prince specific case? Okay, well, Dr. Strobel, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you much.
Let's see here, let's move along on the agenda. Authorize attendance at the watershed district discussion on May 25th.
Yes, Mr. Chair, we had received this forward from the Sauk River Watershed District. They're hosting a meeting for various county boards and wanted to forward that to us. It's scheduled for May 25th at 3 p.m. So if anyone is interested in attending that, we should let them know.
So we have some watershed in the Sauk River watershed apparently? I guess I'm not familiar with
Yeah.
that, but we must have a little area.
I don't know that we do, but they're just hosting it for various county boards, so.
Do you have the agenda on what they're having?
I do not.
discussed?
This is the only email that I got.
Yeah, it says the 5 counties that are included within the boundary, and we must be one of those 5, even though, like I say, it must be just a very small area, because I'm not familiar with the Sauk River's watershed, and the Sauk is in western Stearns County as far as I know, or at least,
It travels, it meanders pretty much
Yeah.
through the whole county.
okay.
You would want to authorize attendance, though, Chris?
So, yeah,
I'll make-
anyone
I'll-
possibly interested in
Yeah,
going?
that's fine. I'll make a motion, we authorize attendance for the Sauk Center
I'll second
watershed.
it.
Motion by Commissioner Burrell, second by Commissioner Lyden to authorize attendance at this meeting. Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimous. Looks like we got a letter back from Stearns County here. Lee, do you want to take that?
I guess it's more of a follow-up item.
The same
If
letter.
you recall, probably about a month ago, we'd received this letter
Oh, it's
from
the same
Stearns.
letter. It's not
Same
the,
letter.
oh, I was thinking it was,
We
okay.
put in the packet for reference. Past direction on that was to send it to the Clearwater, next meeting of the Clearwater River Watershed District for some discussion on what their thoughts were, since we do share membership on that board with Stearns and other counties. So I believe Commissioner Houston was able to attend that meeting.
Okay.
Has a little bit of follow-up.
Yeah, that's right. You reported last week, but we didn't take any action, so.
Correct,
Okay.
right. It was not an action item. So, Mr. Chair, I guess I would propose that we send Stearns County a letter reflecting that we are comfortable with not having term limits for our county, if that's agreeable to everyone else on the board. They have, the managers of the Clearwater River Watershed District have 3-year terms, and Stearns County has imposed term limits, so they can serve for 3-year terms. And Wright County does not have term limits on this board, so
And
Yes, we-
they're
in
kind of looking for
discussion
some
last-
consistency as well.
they would like to have consistency because we have the 3 counties, Meeker County, Wright County, and Stearns County, and Meeker County and Wright County don't have term limits. And in our discussion, we basically haven't had anyone really serving in Wright County for an extended period of time. The 2 positions that we've got on the Board of Managers, one has turned over twice, and this is 3.5 years, and one once. So they've kind of taken care of themselves, but, so if that's the continued consensus of our board,
We can
I-
address it if it ever becomes an issue.
if it ever becomes an issue, but the Clearwater River Watershed managers didn't feel it was a problem if Stearns County had different standards than Wright County or Meeker County, so.
So perhaps a letter from Wright County then indicating that we are fine with the current situation And if Stearns wants there to be consistency, then that we feel it be best that they change theirs to not have term limits in.
Correct, so,
And Lee, you want to pen something like that?
Yes, I'll draft something up.
Okay, do
Okay.
we want to have a motion to that effect then, that we send Stearns a letter indicating that?
Mr. Chair will make that motion that we send a letter to Stearns County stating our position.
Okay. And how our position is based greatly upon the position of the,
Right, after
Watershed
consulting with,
district.
after consulting with the managers
okay.
of the 3 counties that sit on the Clearwater River Watershed District Board.
Motion by Commissioner Houston,
second.
second by Commissioner Potter. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimous. Any other students have any questions for us, or as Commissioner Delight mentioned, answers for us, having? You'll be leaving in just a few short minutes, and if you'd like to.
Oh,
Okay, well, thank you very much. We appreciate you joining us this morning, and we're going to be joining you at noon out at the VFW, or at the Buffalo Legion for lunch, so we look forward to seeing you then, and if any of you have any questions for us at that time, you can certainly approach us individually and ask us any of those.
Or answers.
Answers?
What? I was in the back. I wasn't here. I would have known that you took off outside. Oh. See you later.
He's the one that forgot to tell about Dayton. He
Thank you.
represents a little part of Dayton. He forgot all about Dayton in his district.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
It doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, that's right.
I've
He's,
known him since he was this big.
he's gonna lose those 3 votes now.
Actually, I don't think I ever got any of those
District
votes.
that's got the one. It's a state
There's usually about
district
10 of
panel
them there.
One person, one.
Yeah, and I don't think I've ever gotten any votes out of that one.
You lost 10-0
In
in
Dayton?
Dayton?
Yeah, I think they all vote for themselves.
Oh,
That was my aunt,
Yeah.
so for those of you.
well, if you've got relation there, I can see why you wouldn't get any votes.
No, she's from Monticello. That-
Oh,
That was my aunt there.
Yeah.
Ms. Thielman?
Hmm?
Ms. Thielman?
Patty?
Yeah. Yeah. She's,
She's my mom's sister.
okay, I did not realize that.
Yep.
Well, let's see here.
I don't see.
Item C, letter to the Public Utilities Commission, Commissioner Delyden.
I'm not quite sure how this fell under me,
Oh,
but,
I think you made the motion before.
did I? Oh, man, I can't remember from week to week anymore.
But I'll just help you a little bit, but what we were addressing a little bit is some of the interconnection things between the solar companies and the XL. And then this, Buffalo Township has been unable to come up with the answer why these poles are put right down the middle of the ditch versus off on the property line. And I'm hoping that it's a temporary thing, that they're gonna put up a larger pole back and move it back, but we don't know, and Buffalo has not been able to get an answer either, so.
And
well, I think
Mr.
specifically, we wanted to express our concerns
Right.
about on the ground, things being different than what suggestions were that was going to happen.
Right.
Specifically, and then in particular, the amount of gravel that has been hauled to the site
Right.
for the purpose of roads that will, and we can clarify this, that will create a problem at such time that if the property goes back to agriculture. 2 is, as Charlie mentioned, the location of the poles and why there even was poles and why it wasn't underground, when apparently the
That's what
Buffalo
it was
Township
told.
Board was
They
told it was
said.
gonna be underground. And 3, the cutting down of trees, when the Buffalo Town Board said that this thing was gonna, not do that they were gonna work with the site and environmentally, it was gonna not be changed, and cutting down a few thousand trees is changing it, and not just placing poles up where power, or solar panels up, and not impacting the landscape like that, so.
And Mr. Chair, there is a 4th, and that is the removing of those, I don't remember how many cubic yards of black dirt, of soil is removed. And initially, when the companies were talking about it, they said, well, we go with the lay of the land, and we put the poles down further in the ground, you know, if you're on a hill, and so it all kind of levels off, and that's not what's happening.
Oh, and that speaks
They're
to,
actually going in and leveling more dirt.
If I'm remembering the number correct, it was 250,000 cubic yards of material
Okay.
has been moved, 250,000 cubic yards. That's
Was it
a lot
moved
of-
from the site?
Moved, shifted,
Oh, it's been
shuffling.
shifted on.
Oh, they have leveled it off already?
That's if I'm recalling that number correctly.
Well, I know.
And then another thing, just plain the lack of communication.
Correct.
And that's so key.
No, if this was a site where they bought the land,
They
there's
did
no
buy it.
intention
They
of
did
it
buy
going
it.
back
They
to
did buy it, yes.
agriculture, that's one thing, but, you know, and Mr. Chair, I wanted to point out, the Aurora project is one thing. We had no control over that. It's the Public Utilities Commission that did that, and that's where we're gonna maybe write this letter to. Down the road, though, we are going to have to probably have a similar letter that we're gonna write to Excel, I would like anyway, to find out why the, number of poles that they have to put up and issues like that. So-
And Charlie, I understand, I see what you're, I mean, I kind of hear what you're saying with who, they own the land, but I don't think that really matters, because the premise of our discussion with solar, when we talk with folks, and I've said it, and I've heard you say it, and other people say it, is that
Right back to-
this can go back to agriculture.
Well-
And in fact, if you're taking all the black dirt and taking it off the surface, and if you're putting gravel everywhere, you know as well as I do that is not necessarily harmonious with bringing it easily back to agriculture.
No.
Pulling up the poles and bringing it back to agriculture.
But if it was going into a housing development, we wouldn't say anything about moving all the dirt around. If they own the land and it's not going back to agriculture, that's not going to be a,
But 25 years from now, that site will in all likelihood still be in an area that's being farmed. And again, it's in part, the ordinance and why we allow for this is because we're indicating that it's harmonious with agriculture. It doesn't impact surrounding properties, and it can go back to agriculture. And if in fact they're doing things that it can't, then we shouldn't be making those
right, and
statements.
that's what really disturbed us on the planning and zoning board, is because we've been told, now, these are farms where they don't even own the land, if
Yeah,
they're
here's that
leasing it,
too.
and coming in and starting to move dirt and put gravel roads in, and things that were not put out, it was not upfront with us before,
Right.
so.
It sounded way different in the beginning.
Yep. And now we did this, just FYI, the Planning and Zoning Board did approve a solar project up in the Monticello area, and that is, if it was to go back to anything, it would go back to a gravel pit. So, and they are putting some roads in there, and we didn't see quite the harm there. you
But
know.
that's a gravel pit,
Right.
and it's
That
not,
makes
it's not farm.
It's the gravel pit and the gravel, you know, whatever, it's still
Well,
there, undisturbed too.
You know, the other thing is, that bothers me, is that if it was a housing development, or for whatever other purpose, it still has to go to planning and zoning, for the layout and all that sort of stuff. We had no control, we had no ideas. In fact, I don't think they provided any information to us, other than on how our complaints can be heard. Other than that, they never provided us any information on this project at all, did they?
Specific.
Well, they did come, but the first thing that happened was we got this letter asking us to support these projects in these 3 townships, and that was the first we ever heard of it. So that was, yeah, there was not much communication.
Well, but what Mark's saying is that we didn't have a lot of detail. There was not.
No, we
There was
did
no
not.
detail.
Well, apparently the township got some, and it didn't follow up with what they were told, so. And I'm not sure if that was I think they actually came out to a township meeting.
Yeah, they were
The
at
PUC's
Buffalo, I
actual
think, at
meetings,
least.
you had to go to St. Paul for.
Right.
Or there was one in Montrose. They had some hearings out here too, I know.
Was it actually the PUC, or was it just the applicant?
It was
that did
it was
without the
a
PUC?
administrative law judge and
Okay,
representing the PUC somehow, I'm not sure.
okay.
Yeah, ours was Aurora. Aurora went out to, Geronimo went out to Buffalo Township, but,
Were you there, Chris?
But Geronimo no longer owns this.
and Geronimo was bought out relatively shortly thereafter, so.
And did you hear those statements of, we're gonna work with, we're not gonna be clear cutting tree,
I don't recall them talking about trees at all, at that point, but just about going with the lay of the land and how they would sink the poles in to further, for lower levels or
Yeah.
further for higher levels and leave them up, so it will all, yeah,
Kinda even.
basically working with the land and working to, the neighbors were concerned about the appearance, and so they were talking about what kind of a
Screening.
berm to put around and sort of natural products, and they had the arrays, pictures of the array. I think they had the St. John's array and photos up there, and
So what
so
you're
they're
saying-
kind of demonstrations, but
So you're technically, they didn't lie, because if they said they're gonna go with the lay of the land, they just flatten out the land, and then you don't have to worry about it.
so, yeah, and I don't have anything written or whatever from those meetings, so I have to think back 2 years to,
Have they built the berm there like they indicated yet, or?
I haven't seen anything.
I mean, when I drove by a couple weeks ago, I didn't see any
No,
berming, but
no.
Now,
maybe it
You're
wasn't
talking
even that
about
long
trees
ago.
and whatever for, yeah.
Screening.
wasn't the
Screening,
other
yeah.
issue too regarding those poles is that they never got a permit from the township, they just put the poles up.
Never communicated with the township at all.
So, Lee, you want to read back to us what your letter's all going to say?
Well, I have been taking a few notes, and obviously the polls have been an example of, I think, a lack of the communication that's kind of taken on through this
Right.
whole project. In my opinion, it kind of ran up upon us without us being able to be involved, and kind of after the fact. For example, tomorrow in St. Paul, there is a pre-construction meeting regarding the Annandale project, but I think the opinion of myself and talking with planning and zoning is it's a little late. Everything's kind of been decided that we're kind of a bit along for the ride here, and as my recollection was, the first correspondence we'd had on these projects was, I don't remember the time, but it was getting a letter that they wanted to come in front of the board and ask us to support this.
I believe it was in November or December of 2013.
Yeah, and there, you're just talking about this whole premise of supporting literally, I mean, they had plans all over the state, and they were trying to get blanket.
14.
It was conceptual support just for the whole idea, not for any specific layout of any plan. Now, this one in Annandale, is that actually within the city limits of Annandale we're talking about now? That particular one?
Don't recall.
Because there is at least one in Annandale, in the city limits.
But didn't Annandale turn
I
one
don't-
down?
They turned them down.
But was it one they were able to turn down, or was that one that actually had to come to them?
In the city limits.
The city turned a project of their own down, but the Aurora one that's
And
still
that's
going through.
that's in Corinna Township, but eventually it was
Okay.
part of the orderly annexation plan, so,
So, and that was one Annandale didn't like,
right.
if I remember correctly.
So, I mean, that's a little bit different because Corinna's more or less doing their own, and whereas Buffalo using us, we are I feel a little more responsibility to defend Buffalo. And I don't know if, now Corinna, at the township officers meeting, I know that they kind of, and they did have one and they weren't particularly happy about it.
I think that's the one then.
They didn't.
Yeah, that must be the one. Well, they weren't really happy about something relative to, I don't know if it was because they didn't feel like they really had any input, it was kind of like, or what, they didn't necessarily, they didn't seem to be outwardly against it, but yet they were not happy with some aspects of the process,
Right.
at least I can say that.
They were not happy that they were not consulted at all ahead of
Okay.
time.
John Deering kind of spoke to it briefly, and like I say, I felt a negative vibe on the project relative to their thought on it, and he didn't really clarify a lot of specifics, so.
So maybe one of the things we
Heard from
should
them
be,
more early.
one of the things we should maybe state in this letter is that if they are the Public Utilities Commission, they should have more involved, they should be requesting more local public input or coming to the areas that they're dealing with or something.
For communication.
Better communication, maybe?
Well, perhaps since it was applied for, when Geronimo applied for this permit, for this 100 megawatt project, the Public Utilities Commission should have some sort of a questionnaire about, who have you talked to, I mean, other than just the landowners, they were the only ones that, and they must have not said anything to the townships because they didn't know about it, so some kind of a, like I said, just more open. I mean, everything we do is open and transparent, and they should be too.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess that would be a good terms to put in there. That we request them to be, in the future, more open and transparent about things that are occurring in our county.
Well, and another component of it is, you can be as open and transparent as you want. If somebody's been told one thing with openness and transparency and something else is happening,
Yeah.
Right.
what
Well,
good is the openness and
yeah.
transparency if it isn't what's gonna happen in the end?
The
And arguably, I mean, Buffalo apparently
Was aware
involved
of a
themselves
few
in the
things.
process more than we did, and they're telling us that there was, to some extent, a bait and switch here.
And we don't
Yeah.
know if the PUC has been told one thing and that's something
Well,
else
we don't know
happening
that.
too. Exactly.
That, you know, maybe they did everything they told the PUC, and they just basically told Buffalo Township something different than what they told the PUC, and they followed everything they said they were gonna with the PUC. We don't know that.
But I think there should be more involved in local government. So you'll bring a letter back next
Yeah.
meeting?
We'll draft something up, get in front of you to see if
Maybe
we
you
captured
wanna-
all the points.
Pass it on to a few of us just to review it for some ideas or whatever.
You could run it by Sean and Greg Kreiser too, and see.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know that, I guess, are we gonna wait and approve it once we get it?
Yes.
I think so.
Okay, so then we don't need to take any action right now, then we'll wait and see what we get next, Tuesday then, and we can
Yeah.
make a motion.
I think we should approve what we see,
Drafting.
what it is.
And I guess, none of what I'm saying is we won't
Yep.
take any action here today then, I think. Okay, Woodland Township letter, Charlie.
Mr. Chair, I did receive a letter, and I think you guys have a copy of it from Woodland, about replacing a culvert on Fillmore Avenue, and it's part of the Ditch 31 system. And this is one where we've had some discussion in the past where the culvert years ago was put in at an incorrect elevation. And Woodland Township now, and they are looking to replace it. It's probably, 78 when it got replaced, 88, 98 to the, it's coming up on maybe almost 40 years now. The culvert is very deteriorated. They've been told from one contractor at least that it's going to be, if not now, in the very short time, posing a safety hazard for the traffic, for the road traffic over the top of it. So I know at one time, I heard that Woodland was going to, they need to act on this sooner. They did not put, I heard like 30 days, and I'm like, gosh, I don't know how we can do anything in that. So they did, that's not in here, but they do say that it's imminent, that it needs to be replaced. And I guess, Mr. Chair, I did have discussion with Commissioner Delight, and I think maybe where we could go with this is to have him, he had a meeting with some of the DNR people, and I think maybe he's established kind of a relationship there a little bit that maybe we could see if we can get done. But I cannot see putting the culvert in at the level that it is now, which the water would have to rise up 2 feet, it's just to be level with the culvert upstream at County Road 30, so.
So what are you suggesting that Mark and you try to work out a compromise?
Yeah, and see if, I think what you said, Pat, at the committee of the whole meeting, I think is really reasonable, is the ditch inspector, Mike Young, would like to see it about 6 inches lower than the culvert at 30 to have the flow, which makes sense. But, and you said maybe if we just kept it level with County Road 30, that would still maintain the wetland. And I think it would be a good compromise, and maybe that's what Mark can try to accomplish, something like that. But I can't, personally, I cannot see replacing that culvert and having it higher than the one on County Road 30.
Well, the other issue we have is that the DNR stated that the high-level water,
High water level, yeah.
the high water,
Ordinary high water.
ordinary high water level
Is above the road.
is above the roads. So,
I don't know.
yeah, we're still trying to figure that one out. I don't know how they can state that.
Well, of course, that could only happen if the water came in so fast the culvert hasn't been able to handle it, and has that ever happened?
No. But the other thing
The
is.
culvert's been there for what, 25 years?
The culvert's been there since,
40.
yeah,
40?
yeah,
It was
since
a-
maybe the,
40.
little bit before.
So I
80,
mean,
late
everybody
70s.
around would know. Does anybody remember that water going under, that road going,
It
being washed?
never went over
Yeah,
the
so
road.
I think they're a little off base with that one.
Yeah. The other thing is that Woodland had said that they would also increase the size, and I don't think we need to do that. I think if we can maintain the same size that it currently is.
And they might, maybe it's a good idea to talk with them though, because I think there's reasons to go with a larger culvert, and it might even be a price thing. A 42 inch might, it could be a cost difference, or the other thing for the maintenance to take care of it.
Make it easier to
Yes,
clean.
so I think before we just throw that out, you'd probably want to talk to the township, because they probably have some logic that they want to go with the larger one.
Yeah, but I can see DNR having an issue.
Well,
with
then
putting
you've
a
got
wider
two
one.
things you kind of need them to
Well, and
compromise on
and
instead
that's
of just
something
one, but.
that's maybe another place where they could compromise.
What is the,
It's a 42
diameter?
inch now, and the township is, a common one that the township puts in is a 48 now,
Okay.
which is a 4 foot, and I, you know,
I think you're right, that's a standard.
yeah.
So I'll contact the gentleman from DNR and also the contact I had with,
Bowser,
no, not Bowser,
the
the.
Zayman,
Well, yeah, it's a Bowser, but he also works for, Corps of Engineers.
oh, okay.
is it currently a corrugated steel culvert then?
Yes,
Yeah, and see what happened originally, that was a bridge that was there.
it was a bridge, and then they took the bridge out, and the ditch should have been probably cleaned out, well, not should have, probably.
Yeah.
It should have been cleaned out at that time, instead they set the
set it-
culvert
And
on
those
top of the.
folks that took the easy way out at that time are gone and don't know the headache they've caused.
Yeah,
And it saved them, I don't know, I suppose at the time, probably $100 or something like that to do it that way instead of the other way, or, you know, or,
probably a couple hundred.
well, not a lot at that time, obviously. Okay, so no action on that, but
I
just,
think if we just.
everybody okay with the
acknowledge
suggestion,
Let them work it out.
for you guys, for these folks to try to come up with some compromise here? I think everybody's agreeable that would be a good compromise. Let's see, before we go to advisory committees, I should note that I kind of went from procedure a little bit when I didn't ask that young lady for her name, only because she seemed so skittish about going to the microphone. I didn't want to do that and then have everybody be afraid because of, you know, so that's why I didn't ask for her name, so I apologize for that, Susan.
But,
But,
Mr. Chair,
that's the only reason I did, I just didn't
I thought
want.
it was because she was under 18.
Well, Mr. Chair, you also did wise, because now she can prove to her parents she didn't skip out of school.
Yeah,
I was almost afraid we weren't going to get a comment when I asked her to go up there, so I didn't want to take that next step and ask if she could give her name for the record, but,
But you did very well.
oh, yeah, she did for a while. No, she did. Sometimes we get some very talkative groups and we get a parade of people up to the microphone, and today wasn't one of those days. Advisory committees and advisory board updates, Commissioner Burrell.
I'm gonna pass on it. The only thing that I would say is that Wright County Community Action, Jay, the director, is working on a grant for like a, what was it again, Mark? It's like a lower income, kind of a food, it's not really the food shelf thing either, but it was a food safety type thing, that there's a grant, and he is working on that. And if you recall from our public health presentation, I think it was 17% of people in Wright County felt somehow down the road that they would not have enough food.
They were worrying about
They
where the next
were
meal-
worried about it, kind
the
of
next
thing.
meal was coming.
And so I did get Jay in contact with that study from the Department of Health, and so he's looking at that. I guess that just didn't seem, I mean, if that's really the number out there, it's kind of scary.
Well, you know what's interesting is that is about 2 weeks ago, the one public health thing suggested that 2/3 of the county was either overweight in some capacity. So that only leaves about 16% of the people that aren't either overweight or feeling they're not going to have enough to eat.
But Pat, it actually ties together. If you have fear that you're not gonna have enough food later, you eat
You
more.
eat too much, but yeah, and of course, I don't believe that
Well,
I don't believe that really 2/3 of our population is
Overweight.
overweight. Now granted, I think there's certainly a good number of us that are, but 2/3 I think might be high, but.
Depends on what statistics
But anyway,
you
just-
use.
Well, that's why I disagree with the statistics. I think people that are, they
But the other thing is that, people that are overweight, it's the food that they eat too. They're normally eating high carbs, which has a tendency to put on more weight. So those people could still be concerned
Or empty
where the next
calories.
meal is coming from.
Anyway, that's all I have.
But yesterday we had, when we had those group in there with the ship thing, the one lady mentioned that her husband was 6'2" and weighed, I think, 154 pounds.
155, yeah.
I mean,
That'd be skinny, I think.
holy smokes, that's a thin man. And he's probably very healthy and whatnot, but I mean, most people do not have to have that kind of weight to be healthy. They can be,
A lot of it depends on, muscle mass, has
Exactly.
weight, and, but,
Well, you've got 6'2" people in the NFL that probably weigh 230, 240 pounds. And,
Look pretty healthy.
and I'm not talking about the offensive linemen, some of them that are a little overweight, but anyhow, Mark, I guess it's to you. We're kind of digressing here.
I don't have anything right now.
Oh, let's see. Chris and I had mental health center last night, and generally speaking, things are moving along real well. Dr. Lee, the new director, I'm very impressed with him. He just continues to have some good insight. One thing that we may hear at this board here in the not too distant future, and I think I maybe mentioned this before, but if I didn't, we've got bylaws at that organization that are just unbelievably outdated. I don't know if I've reported that back here or not, but they need to be modernized. And myself and Felix Schmiesing from Sherburne, Spence Burkle from Benton, Dwayne Merrick from Stearns, and the chair of the board, Keith Finstead, also from Stearns, are looking at these bylaws, and we're trying to, one, simplify them because, and two, just make them workable. Right now, they literally contradict themselves, and there's a bureaucracy that exists within them that doesn't need to exist. Only a couple of us that have been around for a long, long time kind of understand how they play relative to the language, and arguably the way we've used them in play doesn't in all cases fit the language, even though it's kind of been the way in which we've understood them to operate. But
When was that Joint Powers Board created?
I believe it was at least, yeah, it was in the 60s, and I'm thinking 63. The county, Wright County got in about 2 years later, I think in 65, but the document we seen was a 1965 document. However, before us, it was just the 3 counties, and we got in about 2 years later. So, but the document we're going off of was the 65 document.
Yeah, then I could understand it needing just a little tweaking for updating.
And we, somewhere along the line, we did update it, and lo and behold, we didn't realize, but the updating never got sent down to and registered at the state office where it needs to be when you're a nonprofit organization. So I think in like 95, we did some things, but in fact, because they were never properly sent down to the Secretary of State's office,
Not properly registered.
registered there, for all practical purposes, they're not really official, even though at one point in time, 20 years ago, we approved them, and whoever was supposed to follow through with it didn't follow through, and you make an assumption, I guess, that somebody's doing that, and I don't know if we had an attorney at the time. It was 21 years ago. I presume we had somebody that kind of helped guide us through, but that didn't happen. So at this point, we kind of thought, I guess that really doesn't matter because we're going to
Redo them.
redo them, and the 95 version wasn't the cure-all, end-all perfect anyhow, so.
What do you using one of the county attorneys for help, or multiple county attorneys?
Well,
or do you have a private one?
we did have 4 county attorneys kind of weigh in on some information for us about a year or so ago, give us some opinion, and outside of that, we do have a gentleman named Ron Brandenburg, who's a private attorney who does some nonprofit law from up in the St. Cloud area. So more specifically, the answer is we're using a private attorney, although we have had our Brian Osselson and in his comps in the other 3 counties give us input a year or 2 ago on so how to get kind of started in this process.
How long is this gonna take to
I-
get straightened out?
I think we're hoping to have something in place by the end of the year.
Okay.
It's kind of is what
I
we're
was thinking
shooting for.
before you left the board.
Yeah, that's kind of the goal, to get it done by the end of the year.
That was where I was going.
One of the things we may use Dr. Lee. Dr. Lee came from a similar organization in the Wilmer area, 6 counties, a little more rural, smaller organization, but comparable in many ways. And, at some point he was kind of, well, this is how we did it there, this is how we, and at one point I finally asked him, well, what'd you think of the document you had over there and how it worked? He said, I thought it was pretty good. Well, so maybe instead of using ours as a starting point, we're gonna look at theirs, and maybe theirs is a better starting point.
Yeah.
Because theirs was just redone a year ago with legal help. So, we're gonna kind of, look at that as well, so.
That sounds good.
So that's something that, I guess, at the end of that process, all 4 county boards are gonna have to vote to approve that, document. So like I say, that's something that you might see, 6-9 months from now, hopefully.
Pat, I failed to mention, but you may want to just mention about last Friday out at Bertram.
Mark and I were out at Bertram with Mark Mattice and some city officials and other folks from the Bertram Advisory Board, kind of looking at the lay of where the roads are going to go, that sort of thing, which are critical to the long term as far as how we're going to build around it. And primarily the roads and the parking areas was the biggest thing we looked at that day, and then kind of how some of the buildings and structures would sit relative to them. But
Then we also looked at the landscaping that had been done in preparation for this coming Saturday, where we'll be planting
the trees.
6,000 trees.
Yep, and it sounds like they've got, I think they can use more, but they've got a good number of, I thought I heard 30 volunteers, of which like about a half dozen of them are actually college students who are in that field of botany or something like that. Forestry or something like that, and they're kind of experts in the field. So that's going to happen on Saturday if people are still interested. I think it's from like 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. You can call out the Wright County Parks. 682-7693, I think, is Mark's number, although I think Brad's in charge of it. I don't know his number off the top of my head, but
Brad
on
Harrington
the
would be
website.
682-7894.
682-7894. Brad Harrington is kind of leading the effort, and like I say, it's not going to take but probably 3 hours or less, and it's going to be a great opportunity to say I planted 6,000 trees in that park if you participate in
I'm
that.
hoping I'll be able to make it. I'm waiting for an employee to find out whether or not he's going to be healthy enough to work this weekend.
Yeah, and I think as I mentioned, I've got about 5 or 6 other things unfortunately going on that day, so I can't make it. But otherwise, that's probably the main items that I've been involved with in the last week. Had a Historical Society meeting, and folks are thankful to your efforts, Lee, and kind of coming out and helping with some stuff relative to the building, so thanks for that.
Thank Brad.
Mike?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Last Tuesday, Great River Regional Library Board met, and it's the beginning of a budget cycle out there.
Already.
Going to what Benton County uses as baseline budgeting situation is a little different than what, but that's, the smaller counties that are involved in that are enthusiastic about how it works. One of the other things is that they have to make any library that wants to have any changes to their budget has to state their case and talk to us about it. There's, as far as I know right now, 3 libraries are looking to increase hours, minimal, but increase, and they'll have to state their case and why and how. The other thing is the reorganization. Karen Punsak, the executive director, has changed the structure a little bit, getting rid of the associate director that used to be there and making it more lineal, so you have a little more, and I forget the exact name, but I think it's more of the internal, not just patron service, but I think for not remembering the name of that person right now, but it's a structure, so the associate director will equate into a savings with the the library board, and we had talks about if that's gonna be too much of a burden on her, but the way it seems like it's structured, it seems to be okay. We vetted it out a little bit.
And that was her former position, wasn't it?
Correct.
So I suppose she feels like she's got a little more ability to take on some more of that role since she's extremely familiar with it.
She's real familiar with it, and the ones that are in charge of the different patron service directors will have a little bit of an increased role in what they do. So it'll be a little bit of a savings center, try to make it a little bit more fluid to help fit the structure. The public relations end was looking at getting an increase in what they're allotted. It was $30,000 last year. A little bit more to get the word out, because one of the big things that have happened at the libraries, pretty much everyone across didn't realize that Great River Regional Library has access to Ancestry.com. See, they didn't realize that they have that already. And
Only at the library, though, you can't get it from home, right?
it's at the library. I'm not sure about your home thing.
So that would be the same thing as if, otherwise people have to, at home, they have to pay a membership so they could actually go to the library and
Do it for free.
do that for free?
Yep.
I believe so,
Is
but
that
I'm
how you
not sure
understand it to be,
how that all works.
That's the way it is. You can go to the library and do it for free. You can't bring the program
I
home.
wonder, I can't say this for sure, but if that's the case, I would speculate that maybe you could do the same thing out at our museum too. If you went out there and used their computer and go on there.
But anyway, Mr. Chair, more to come with the budget gets kind of settled and vetted out.
Thank you, Mike.
I attended the Crisis Nursery fundraiser in Monticello last Friday night. It was very well attended, and they had a great auction and silent auction, and Peabody players from Otsego entertained us. They're kind of like comedy sports team. They apparently are there twice a month, and they raised a lot of money. It was a great cause. And then I also just wanted to share that the Journal Press had an article about Wright Choice delivers about the backpack buddies, and they're asking members of the community are always welcome to donate their time by helping fill backpacks. So they can contact Joy Turner at 763-684-2395 to set up a time to help. So I was thinking I really should go over there and see what they need, but they can also donate food by bringing it to the Wright County Courthouse in Buffalo or the Buffalo High School.
And the Right Choice is the program for truancy.
Exactly, it's a
Diversion.
alternate program, alternative to having kids when they're suspended
From
or.
school, yeah.
Yep, so they actually have to show up and do something, and it's really been helpful for these kids to have a positive thing to do instead of just staying home or whatever. So, yep.
Good. Nice. Any closing comments? There being no further business, the board is adjourned at 10:04 a.m.